Hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting episode of Tech Productions. Today I, Bancroft, being joined once again by Nick and Fluff.
Hey,
I think Bancroft forgot where he was for just a second. What up, people?
Well, when you record so many videos, you forget who is in what video when people are in the
Yeah.
chat. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
today's matchup, like our last one, is an untapped match because it's part of the Rising Phoenix Odyssey tournament that me, Fluff, and Jake are part of. And this is my actual first round, and I'm playing set 1 Broly, while my opponent, BigONotation, is playing the Syn Shenron, sorry, I don't want to say it wrong, Xeno
Syn
version.
Shenron.
Yeah, which is the mill version. And keep in mind, the way these tournaments are typically set up is that they are best of 3, and every round you play a different deck. So this is my first round, and I'm picked OG Broly, and we have Nick on here because he also enjoys this deck as much as I do.
yes, I also have no friends.
So this is actually the third round of this matchup, and I chose this one because this kind of worked and came down to the wire, and both me and my opponent were able to successfully kind of get our stuff going. Now, in the first round, it was just a brutal brick. Like, I saw nothing that was of importance, and I just couldn't do anything. And then in the second round, my opponent, he didn't see the Toa Unison at all. So, like, we were hoping the third round would be kind of a nice balance, and it kind of was. He got to see what he wanted, I got to see what I wanted, and we went from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it always
That's a-
feels bad when you brick like that. Like, it's like if your deck needs one card to run and then you just don't see it until like
Yeah.
turn 3 or 4,
The,
like real late. Like, ugh.
the Xeno Syn Shenron deck literally loses probably 60% of its viability by not seeing the Toa.
And I will say, like, I don't think I mentioned to him when we were after we got done playing, but because we like to try to play every deck we possibly can when new sets come out, just to kind of get the experience there, put on the channel and whatnot. I knew in these matchups that I really didn't care much about his Unison, and I wasn't going to force his leader, if I could make sure it didn't happen, to activate its blocker, because it gives the Unison more markers. If he were to get to that 7, it just floods the board with more cards, and that's always a problem. So I just, if I could, target the leader if I was able to.
Yeah. If he wants, especially once he establishes like the 4-drop on the field, or once he awakens, he will legitimately start using markers faster than he can accrue them. If you keep him from utilizing the blocker skill on the leader. So just swinging into the leader, he doesn't get to use blocker.
And you have quite a few ways to do straight removal with OG Broly. So you really don't even need to go for his board at all. Like, a lot of your tech pieces and stuff will do that for you, which is nice. And I do see you like you're like me with the small package with the Bardock Unison and the 1-drops. Love it.
You got to, man.
Yeah, it's just such a strong package, and then especially with the super combo Vegeta in your hand, you're able to search it with the Bulma you played turn 1, so you can find the super combo which drops a card from hand, the Bardock Unison which drops a card when it KOs a 1-drop. Like, it's value city with all your 1-drops. Like, the way I see it is essentially you're doubling the value of every 1-drop you play, which is just huge because it's just more advantage for you and less for your opponent.
Syn Shenron is not going to have a fantastic way of blowing out that 1-drops. They could put out their 3-drops, which will warp a card or swallow a 1-drop, but on your turn, you're going to play a 1-drop. So unless they're striking a life for Super Kamehameha or something like that, they're not going to be able to respond to the 1-drops coming in. And you're just going to be getting the rips. I mean, Syn Shenron is already on 4 cards in their hand.
I would say in this first round, I tried playing the super combo first on turn 1. I didn't see the Bulma. And I was like, okay, cool, get rid of a card, I'll pass turn. He went first, if I'm correct. And on that turn 2, he, instead of playing, he focused on both the hazes to just immediately get rid of that. Like, he controlled my board since I couldn't get the field card. So I
Yeah,
kind of knew.
it's kind of awkward. If you like miss the turn one on a one drop, then if they remove it that turn, like it kind of puts you in a weird spot. So yeah, I can understand that. It's like a lot of times you're going on the back foot because you have to play a turn behind just to get the hand control back up, which feels kind of weird. But you can it's able to be recoverable, especially when you have more energy, like in the turn three, turn four style.
Was it I think it's the Shenron that is a crit blocker, I believe, as a 3-drop. That is probably the most threatening card in this game for you, except for maybe the 4-drop. But with your leader's ability, especially once you get Awakened and Demonic Restraint on the field, you're going to be blowing those out every turn. So once you're to the point that you are ready to awaken, his field is just no longer threatening. And with you discarding, he's also not getting the replacement effects on his Shadow Dragons. So this is a really uphill match for Syn Shenron.
So, Bancroft, I notice you have the SS3 Vegeta Unison in play, or in your hand, rather. When do you like to go in between the Bardock and the Vegeta? Because both of them are pretty integral, and it kind of feels weird to get rid of one or the other. So, when do you like going into that transition?
So if I'm able to do the triple attack, it'll be that turn. Like I'll do the -3 swing, and then once I get done with that, pay the 4 for the Bardock Unison for the Vegeta Unison, and I'll only do that really if I feel comfortable in that following turn. If for some reason I can't beat them, have a Dormant or a Shocking Death Ball or have a Frieza on board ready to stop furthering plays.
Yeah, because at the right matchup, the Bardock Unison is just value city.
Oh yeah,
It's crazy, especially if you're playing multicolor decks that like to use arrivals. Like blue yellow is a big one that comes to mind. You can just stop that by denying a combo piece from them. So it's so integral. Like it's such a weird like touch and go based play it by ear when you want to transition to those. So I know in my testing it's always hard to find the right time to play the difference between the two because the Vegeta Unison is devastating in its own right, but it's the options you have to weigh out in between the Bardock and the Vegeta. But I like them both. They're amazing.
I know it's not always possible, but I think like the best time to do it, at least in my observation, would be if you're able to get your opponent to go to no cards in hand. Then that's when it's safe to drop your double striker, because then you double strike crit with it. Then your opponent is going to start their turn with no cards in their hand. So as long as you have something else in your hand, there's very few things that you would just die to on that.
Yeah. That's why I really like the Vegeta in my Clash Coup list, just because the leader is inherently double strike. So if they're at 4 life and then they have like almost nothing in hand, I swing with the double strike crit for 2 damage and then to swing with my leader for double strike in this game. So I really like that combo in that deck, but it fits pretty well in here too. The board removal is really nice. Just that double strike crit pressure is huge, especially in the later turns when their life's pretty low, because they don't really suspect a big type bomb from this type of deck. They usually think of a slow burn, and then by the time they don't have anything in hand, then you just blow them out of the water with a tall boy like that.
Based on where we're at in the game right now, I mean, I think if you're playing against green, you have to expect the big Unison drop. Like, you just have to. I don't think there's a way to not expect that.
Yeah. And so that was kind of a misplay. I should have swung with the Frieza first, the 10k. And when he activated Blocker, he wouldn't have gained any cards from his life if he wanted to. Where instead I swung with the Unison. So now he gets to take the damage for that and gain the additional card.
What? Bancroft, I know you and I kind of discussed this match prior to, but and I'm sorry, I can't remember the player's name, but are they part of London Players Guild?
No, they are big notations.
Big notations. Okay, and we'll have links for them below, right?
It's on the screen. Like that is their channel.
Okay, good.
If I'm correct, it is. So here,
sorry, I didn't mean to take away from the game.
Nah,
Just
you're
wanted
good.
to get that out.
I just realized like that was the wrong order. I should have swung the Frieza first. When he activated blocker, he wouldn't have gained anything from it, and then just follow it up with the Unison strike onto like the either the battle card or to the Unison.
Yeah.
So here's an example. I tapped out. I had a Shocking Death Ball, so I knew I was safe, and they only had 2 cards left in hand, so they would gain a card, have to charge a card, and be in a rough spot, and I felt comfortable with that to tap out. Knowing that he's going to target my Unison, I would just Shocking Death Ball to take a life, and then just stop the attack. If he were to play the 1-drop Haze again, I'd be like, okay, cool, this would be a target for that. And that's kind of what I was hoping for going into this following turn.
Now, did you notice? Because I didn't get to see the entirety of the full 3 matches. But was he playing the full mill strategy? Like his goal was to mill you out, or was he just using it as a form of resource denial to shut you off of different things throughout the game?
I think he was heavily towards the mill strat, but it's hard to do that against Broly because Broly doesn't draw a lot early on, and since he's not targeting my leader, I'm safer to be able to just mill stuff out because I'm not losing as much resources in that route. Like I'm not afraid of being milled out.
And since they run rebrands, like it's even better for you if he does do that.
Based on common trends that we've seen with the Shenron, the Shadow Dragon archetypes, this deck doesn't have all of the tools that I think it's intended to have just yet. So it doesn't have the ability to mill as aggressively as it needs to be a fully viable deck or win option. And that's been my problem in testing with this deck. And like I've refined with the deck, and this is not a comment towards this player at all, but the deck is just, it's kind of bad. Maybe they've had a different experience with it. I know there's a pretty big difference between like the European meta and the American meta, the North American meta. So it could be a factor in those differences.
I know he plays is it Dragon Slaying Bullet, the extra card for Unisons, the counterplay?
Yep.
Yeah, our second game, when I got to see pieces, I went to go play Unison, and he's like, I'll do, that's kind of useless, isn't it? I'm like, yeah. He's like, never mind. And I was like, yeah, my buddy Fluff, he tried the deck out, and I was like, how many do you play? Wait, hang on, wait till after we get done playing for you, tell me that information. And then I kind of went to the explanation, like, Fluff was like 4 of, and then after playing, he's like, this is a 2 of.
At max, you don't even need it. The only reason that you run it is because it's a Shadow Dragon extra card.
Yeah.
It's not that great. Like,
he mentioned dropping it back down to 2 himself after this match.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what this archetype gets in the future because there's a nice groundwork of potential.
I mean, that's kind of how Shenron was originally. Like
right.
It was good, but if you knew how to beat it, you could beat it just fine.
Yeah.
But then they started adding more and more pieces to it, and then the deck became, oh, this is a deck.
Right. It flowed, it fit well. And the way that it played once everything was together was not really similar to how it played once everything was out. So I hope that's the case with this deck because it really is a fun deck and it's an interesting archetype with a lot of potential moving forward depending on how much Bandai decides they want to put into it.
So here he kind of established a couple a blocker, and I was really hoping for him to swing, and he didn't. So I didn't get a chance to do Shocking Death Ball against him.
Yeah, and that tells me that he is attempting the mill strategy here.
That hurts you charging that 6-drop Broly.
So I broke it down to if I were to play the Unison this turn, I can rely on at least one Shocking Death Ball. Like, it was either I play a double strike 30k, which gets rid of 2 cards, which would not have been a bad play. And I think after I charged that, I mentally said to myself, I probably shouldn't have done that. And I chose
Yeah, what I like to do. Oh, sorry. What I like to do with that double striker is since he has the Unison on board, is well, he would activate blocker in this case, but like when most people they can't activate blocker on a leader, just swinging at the Unison just to get rid, just to remove markers from it, because you're denying them the resources that they would get if you swung at the lead, which is huge, especially at this point because you'd only have what like one card in hand. I, I like doing that a lot. Unisons just make hand control a lot more viable strategy now because you don't have to go into giving a leader their resources back.
Well, and even now, where he's not been focusing on the Brawly leader, he can freely swing the leader into the lead without having to do damage because the Brawly is still on the front side. So the Brawly's not going to do damage. So it's still going to provide resource denial.
Yeah, and in this matchup, like I said, because the leader has blocker, it's a different story. But Unison's just made OG Broly a lot better too, because the permanent says you can't swing at battle cards on the leaders. Like you have to swing at leader cards, but now you can swing at Unison cards because of grammar. So
Absolutely,
that's nice.
But yeah, like I said, the mindset there was if I played this, it was a guaranteed board wipe. And that's why I went that route, though, instead of the other one.
It's going to be so hard for him to recover from that as well. Like, unless he has an ultimate whirlwind spin in hand, like, his chances for recover are so low.
Yeah, and I don't think that Xeno Shadow Dragons runs any type of big, like, bomb-style cards, right? Like, it's a pretty slow burn-style deck.
The biggest that it naturally runs within its own archetype is the 4-drop Syn Shenron, which is a double strike blocker, warps a card, mills a card, can restand itself, activate main, spirit boost, which lets you play as an extra card for free. Like it's a really good card, but it doesn't change the state of this field.
There is one other card that they could play that potentially a great defensive option or a great offensive option, and that's the secret rare.
Yeah, the yellow secret rare. Yeah, because it does fulfill the Shadow Dragon tag.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that card, because Black's general lack of defense and control with a deck that wants to go long makes that such an integral piece in this deck. You know, it's so important. Does it do much in this situation, though?
So he swung the Unison. I'm like, Unison, what? And then he comboed with the Syn Shenron. I'm like, okay, cool. And so he's like I said, he's on the one card now. I'm at one card. His main goal was if he could clear my Unison, it's a chance he has it. But I've been holding on to the Shocking Death Ball for a very long time.
Yep, you bastard.
And I think that's what he said too. He's like, of course you have a negate. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I think that's it. I think you got it, man. And I'm like, well, we'll see. Yeah. So I think that was just it. He's like, this is the only card I have in my hand.
Oh yeah, there's no way. Your Unison wraps it up. I mean, you know, and that's the strength to Dark Brawly is crit, resource denial, hand control. I mean, it's just such a disgusting combination, especially if you are given the time against a slower deck to make it happen.
And here I'm kind of like, I drew my card just to see like what my next turn would have been, and then I think after talking about I'm just overthinking this. I could just swung the Unison. He's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah. So we kind of wrapped it up there. And with that being said, thank you all for tuning in. Hope you all enjoyed today's match. Like always, there's buttons. Feel free to click them. Don't forget to check out their channel down below in the description as well. Give them some love. It was a great dude, great match. Would always like to play again. And while Fluff does the outro, there's buttons on the screen.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. Brawly doesn't draw a ton, so actually getting the mill out would have been incredibly hard. But definitely, they went to match 3, or to game 3 in the match. So definitely did a really good job of going back and forth and actually pushing this one. It did come down to the wire in the tournament. But as always, read your cards, know your plays. Let us make the mistakes so that you don't have to. And as always, fluff out.